Yep.
Okay, so are we recording officially?
We are.
Okay, so this is finally the first podcast entry. And I'm already slurring my words because... Yes. So, the first podcast entry of like 20 attempts.
It's been a few.
Fantastic. So I'm very excited that this is the last attempt for the first podcast entry.
Yes.
Or with at least extremely high probability.
Yes.
Okay. So let's get started then. So the first thing, Sheldon's been wrestling with this setup for like 3 hours.
Yes, about that. Yeah.
And I also want to note that that took a long time. So thank you for, that's 3 hours I won't get back. So thank you. I just want to
remind everybody what a dick you are about blaming me for everything. And then it turns out to be a problem with your iPad that caused me 3 hours of my time.
Apparently this iPad just cost Sheldon and me 3 hours. But other than that, I think the mics sound good. Everything sounds good.
Yeah, so, it sounds really good.
So, yeah. And it got me time to get some energy drinks in me, I guess. Mm-hmm. Good job. So, a few things. The obvious part is this is a podcast for We Buy Businesses, right? So, it's with the We Buy Businesses, and that's our holdings company, and we want to do some marketing for it, and hence the podcast, right? The idea that we've had for a while, and we've wanted to produce it for a while, and so I'm excited that this is finally the first entry. And is there anything top of mind you want to talk about? I got a couple things. I'm ready to go.
You go for it, man. I'm just gonna.
Cause think about it.
I'm just gonna sit here and just relax after the last 3 hours of fucking around, trying to get this system to work.
Well, first of all, I think if you solved this sooner, we would just be more fresh of mind. So, next time, we got to be a little faster. I'm just saying. But no, so I think there's a lot of things to talk about. I mean, we can talk about Trudeau and the tax changes.
Chinese trade deficits.
Let's
talk about Chinese trade.
No, they have a
deficits.
surplus. They have a surplus. They're sitting on.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yes. That's not
good.
Captain Morgan talking. That's Sheldon talking.
That's right.
Yes. So we can talk about that. We can talk about Trump. We can talk about things within our own businesses. And the thing about this podcast is we don't really have an agenda. I've just been kind of hanging out, having a good time, just trying to maintain my composure as Sheldon tries to figure this out. But I'm excited. So I'm curious to know what your thoughts are on on the changes of the business tax rate with Trudeau and everything. Obviously, we have a bias and a conflict of interest to say that's bad, but
honestly, I don't know much about it. I know I was asking you about it the other week. I don't really focus on it too terribly much. I know that's your area of expertise, and I know you're going to do the best job you can to kind of mitigate all the things that we can, and that's why I'm lucky to have you on board, because that's not.
Are you sure how much Captain Morgan's is in this here?
It's quite a bit, actually.
Yeah.
3 fingers, just over 3 fingers. Yeah.
Nice. Well, but compliment's a compliment nonetheless, buddy.
No, I'm serious, because that stuff I don't really resonate well with. You know what I mean? So that's why we work good as a team, and I just want to focus on getting more revenue in, and that'll kind of fix a lot of the issues that I have with it, right? So. Yeah.
Well, there's a lot of challenges there, and I think the big thing, because it's top of mind for me, like the Trudeau tax changes, and how I think. I'm kind of I always think about probabilities, and I don't try to be too opinionated right? And I try to look things at as objectively as possible. And I understand why Trudeau and the Liberals are trying to increase tax rates. And I see the argument is like, Canada already has a competitive tax rate compared to all the other countries. But does that mean you have to follow everybody else? I don't know. That doesn't make any sense to me. You know what I mean? You're already competitive. Wouldn't you want that? You know what I mean? I feel that, if you just do what everybody else does, how do you have an advantage?
I don't know. I'll put it back to something I've said on Facebook quite a few times, and I actually pulled back my political posts on Facebook because
politics right now is fucking crazy.
It is. And this is where I disagree with having a goddamn drama teacher running the country. Countries should be run like a business because they are a business. You have income, you have expenses, you have, labor expenses, you have, everything can break down the exact same way for the country as it can for a business. And this is why I have a problem with the drama teacher doing it, because every decision that he's made since he's got in there is to increase revenue for the government, which I understand. But I think there's better ways to do it, because small business in Canada, is, I can't remember the specs on it, but it is basically the driving force, and the biggest employer of people in Canada is small business. So why would you
take that?
Cut down small business or take it out at the knees. Why wouldn't you give it every advantage to employ more people, and then the people pay tax? I have no problem with tax, but why would you hit the biggest demographic of employers in Canada, which is small business? And I think you get more tax if you give small business breaks, which can employ more people, which can allow businesses to grow, employ more people, and get bigger. And the people can pay the tax. That's fine. I have zero problem with that. But small business taxes.
So on the flip side, so there's two stories to this. So obviously Trudeau's saying, well, the 1%, which by the way, me and you, I wouldn't consider the 1%.
Far from 1%.
And yet we're going to be affected considerably by this tax rate. So he's like, the 1%, we got to tax this and give tax breaks to the middle class. So I understand his mindset towards the situation, but the 1% is just such it's so messed up of a term. It doesn't make any sense. Like the 1% of wealth on the planet is actually, if you're a citizen of Canada or the U.S., you're already 1% of the global wealth already. So there's that context. But when you drive it even more into Canadian, the 1% of Canada, these tax rates affect us tremendously. And we're not even in the 1%. So I don't know how we've been targeted. I mean, I'd love to be in the 1%. I'd love that. That'd be fantastic. But, all of our revenue just gets reinvested back into the company, right? Like all of that revenue, all of that net dollar revenue just goes back into our entities. And so the argument, so two sides, right? One, I understand it. Trudeau, the 1%, it's not, fairness is very subjective. That makes me a little nervous. But then the second part is, who can spend money better? I think we can spend money better than the federal government.
Oh, I would agree with that. What is the spec on that? They say 30% of every dollar the federal government spends is wasted. And I completely agree with that.
Yeah, there's so many.
I'm not wasting 30% of my dollars, personally or in the business.
We can't waste any money.
No.
Let's say there's this new R&D item to buy in our business, and nobody else is using it, and it costs $30,000, right? Well, we better have our fucking shit together before we spend $30,000 to, So we're not going to waste $30,000 lightly. It really does affect the business. And, you know, it's kind of, it's just like, who would you rather have with the money in their pocket? Do you want the government to have more revenue to spend, or do you want private companies with more money to spend? And here's another thing too, if you think about it. If you look at public sector and private sector jobs, if more taxes, if tax rates go higher and more net dollars of private companies go to the public sector, what's going to happen with jobs? You're just going to have more public sector jobs. And I would argue you need more private sector jobs. You know, if it just doesn't make sense in the long run. Eventually, it's unsustainable for the government.
Public sector jobs are paid for by private sector jobs. So, you know, if you're not growing the private sector, you're not going to have a public sector. And that's why I don't get lots of the things that they do to hurt the private sector. Like, you grow, like I said, you allow small businesses to grow and hire and, you know, give them all the tax breaks. You'll get your tax money from the employees that they hire. And like I said, I stopped putting political stuff on Facebook because I have, you know, a few buddies, but one especially who is just as opinionated as me, actually more so, but in the exact opposite
I already know what you're talking about.
You know, and
he's always getting his digs too, right?
I know. I love the guy, but you know, I had to stop putting stuff on there because it was just it was too much.
You know?
it was too much. But he doesn't get the other side of things. Owning a business, having employees, trying to grow. I mean, sure, our business right now makes a few $1 million in revenue, but it does not make a ton of money. And everybody says, and even me, when I was on the other side of the fence, like, oh, the business makes a couple $1 million a year, you know, must make so much cash. But that's not the case.
Yeah, because
there's so many expenses and you know, taxes and
any net dollars and any net dollars that you do have has to go back into the business because you have competitors on all ends looking to like die to grab more market share. So sure, we could pay ourselves more, but at the end of the day, you've got 4 or 5 guys salivating at the mouth to try and just grab some of the work that you have. So you have to reinvest, or else it puts the entire structure at risk.
Yeah.
And so now you have less to reinvest because, well, the Liberals need more revenue to generate to pay the bills. So, and here's the thing. Again, we are not the 1%, but yet we've been grouped into this demographic. I would love to be the 1%, by the way. And second, I'm okay paying more revenue. You know what? Let's say the government takes taxes from me and gives to the less fortunate. That's a great scenario. I love that. That's great. But the problem is there's a point of diminishing returns, and I think we've passed that. And the other thing too, you want to be competitive tax-wise internationally. If our taxes are still low, entrepreneurs and investors will flow more money to us. Mm-hmm. Why do you always hear about Apple and these Fortune 500 companies going to offshore corporations?
Yeah.
Because of the tax competitiveness.
Well, that's the thing. Trudeau thinks he's so smart and he wants to target the 1%, but the 1% are goddamn well smart enough to know to get their money out of where they're highly taxed. And that's the problem. Like Trump's raising... Sorry, I said that backwards. Trump's lowering the small business tax, which I think is amazing because it will allow exactly what we were talking about. But Trudeau's raising it.
They already have debt problems too. Their debt. I mean, they're hitting $20 trillion. They already have a boatload of fucking issues. So do we.
But I mean, same thing. The only way I believe just to kickstart the economy is to give small business breaks and, you know, get jobs, get people paying tax. And when you have such a high unemployment rate like they do in the States, the only way to fix that is to give small business tax breaks, get people starting small business, get people hiring, small business hiring people, and get that tax revenue coming in. It doesn't come from small business. You're going to be far better off getting people to pay personal tax, but having, small businesses employ those people. That's my belief, and that's what I see. I've played both sides of the fence. I've been an employee for a really long time. I get the employee mentality. I've been a business owner for coming up on 3 years, but I feel like, together, the three of us as a team, you, me, and Colby, I feel like we have such a pretty good stranglehold on how business works and, that kind of things. I feel like I have a very good perspective of both sides of the fence. And, I can understand both, but I feel like employees and people like Trudeau who haven't been business owners, haven't made payrolls, haven't done all that stuff, they have a feeling like they have an understanding of the other side of the fence, being an employer or a political leader, but they honestly, unless you've lived it and breathed it, you really don't.
No, it's true. Like, a lot of people call themselves entrepreneurs, but they've never paid like remittance tax for 3, 4, 5 employees for years, right? It's think about this: remittance tax, right? That's the federal and provincial. Or if you're in the U.S., and I'm sure there'll be a lot of U.S. watchers or listeners here, there's going to be a lot of just tax off of the employee, right? Federal, state. And that comes out of the entrepreneur's bank account if you watch the flow of funds. So every month, like for us, every month on the 15th, we have an enormous remittance tax every single month. And, at some point, it's, if you haven't experienced that, how are you to talk about employees? And, if there's a conflict of interest, people sit down as employees, they've never paid remittance tax a day in their life, and then they make assumptions. And I think it's more difficult than people
it's
make it out
tough.
to it.
It's very tough. Everybody thinks if you own a business and you get so much revenue, like I said before, you got it made. But there's so much more.
There's so much to it, and it gets so multi-dimensional. Like, even if people don't know the difference between a statement of cash flows and a financial statement, you could think like, oh, the month of January I netted 10%, but really, if you look at the statement of cash flows, you just lost money, and people don't know how that works. And then you have to still pay your remittance tax. Oh, and if you do net any money at the end of the year, now you have to pay more net dollars, right? So the big thing, however, that concerns me most about the Trudeau, not to just keep going back to that, but is the retirement percentage. The taxation rate is like 70+%. Does that
of what they're proposing?
Yeah, like, so if you have your holdings company,
tax. I think it was an estate tax.
Is that an estate tax? Because I know it's already high all over the world.
From what I understand, is if you die, your estate tax pays like 72 or 73%. Like, that's
crazy.
It's insane. Beyond anything that makes sense
to
me.
So if you die, the government just takes all your shit.
Essentially. And nothing gets handed down to your kids or anything that you work your whole life for.
How are you supposed to generate like generational wealth? How is your kids supposed to?
That's not what the government wants.
That's crazy to me.
It is crazy. They want to make their interest and their tax and everything off everybody every time between transactions and generations and everything. They want that clock to reset so people are paying nothing but interest all the time rather than principal. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah, and I already know a bunch of entrepreneurs that over the last couple of years have pushed a bunch of money out of the country, and they started international corporations, all legitimate, of course, but they're pushing money out of the country. And the more that these taxation rates go up, like, I get it. Obviously, we've got to pay for the infrastructure. I have nothing wrong against that.
No,
and even like our little socialist medical system, like, I have nothing wrong against that. I had surgery last year. I didn't pay anything for it. I was like, oh, how much do I owe you? Like, oh, nothing. Well, okay, that's cool. And back I went. And as an entrepreneur, actually, I really appreciated it because all my money was going back into the business anyway. I don't have an extra 10, 15 grand. Okay, here you are, let's go for surgery. And it was only like, I think, a 2 or 3 month wait. So the whole process was great, and I can appreciate it. So my point is this, though. I'm okay paying tax. It's just, when is the point of diminishing returns? When are you taking away from the overall benefit? And this reminds me. Okay, you ready? You ready for this? Okay.
Yeah.
So I have a chart. It's on my phone. You know what we need is one of those like screens where you can push to a different screen and show like a chart or some shit. Because there's a chart that fucking illustrates this so well. If you look at the Alberta taxation rate, which has gone down tremendously over the years, but obviously before the NDP came in, that goes back up. But if you look at it, the percentages are just they go down over the course of 15, 20 years, and the tax revenue as a
Let me guess. Goes up. Oh my God.
It's fucking
Let me guess.
awesome.
It's
because they're competitive, and now entrepreneurs and investment dollars
and
are coming into it.
More people coming in, more businesses, and you're hire more employees, and the employees pay tax. Oh my fucking God, people!
That's crazy.
Yeah.
And I know it sounds logical. You increase the taxation rate, more tax revenue. It seems logical, but there's an argument to make to lower taxes, to be competitive, to push money through that jurisdiction, and then ultimately gain revenue. And that's what Alberta shows over the last 20 years, obviously before the NDP. Mm-hmm. And then lastly, here's the thing, because I get the arguments on the other side. People are like, oh, well, the conservatives, and by the way, I'm not pro-conservative or anti-conservative. I'm not pro-liberal. I'm not anti-liberal. I feel like there's no party that represents the complexity of the individual, really. Mm-hmm. I mean, that's a whole other rant for another day, but you look at Alberta and the people on the other side go, well, the PC, the conservatives should have charged more royalty rates. They should have took more money from these oil companies, and we should have invested better. And I get that, but at the same time, you have to look at it. The average human being in Alberta, the average Albertan, made so much money. Like, you look at the Alberta family income compared to the rest of the country.
Oh, it's insane.
It's fucking not even close.
I think, what is it? I haven't even looked at it in a while, but even I think it's like 100 or 125,000 or something as
it's
a,
like
a
almost
household.
Double. It's almost double.
You know what's messed up also is, like, well, obviously people that know me know I love Las Vegas. It's like a second home to me. Fucking love it down there. Anyway, I was looking at...
Just watch out for the Jell-O shots.
Yeah. Anyway, I was looking at something just like last week, and the median income of a household in Las Vegas is like $39,000.
Wow, I didn't know that.
$39,000, and that is the most customer service-driven industry I've ever seen in my entire life. It's amazing.
Yeah.
Right? So you have an entire industry driven on customer service, and they're making $39,000 a year per household.
That's
not
crazy.
Per person.
So like the both parents could be working.
That's right. And then you come to freaking Alberta, Grand Prairie, Alberta, and you're making $125,000 per household.
Yeah.
It's unreal. Like, we're so fortunate to live in the place that we do.
Man, it's crazy. I remember I was 19. I had no high school diploma. I had no academic success, no experience, no skills, no tools, no nothing. Not even really a good attitude for a 19, 20-year-old. But I had 2 jobs. I worked my butt off, and I had, like, my income was very close. I forget exactly. I don't have T4s here, but very close to the gross family income average of Canada. And here I am, 19, no skills, right? So I think there's a side, like, again, I'm not trying to push conservatives. I'm not trying to push NDP. I'm not trying to push any political agenda. I'm just saying, like, look, I mean, low tax rates, we really have to look at the total base tax revenue and where that's going. And just because other countries have higher tax rates, does that mean we increase ours? And then we actually have to look at our expenditures as well. Again, I'm 100% okay with some of my tax revenue going to help others that are less fortunate. Our medical system and stuff like that. I can appreciate that. But I think that there's a point of diminishing returns, and I feel that there's a point where it's like, okay, well, my corporation, would invest, create more jobs, spend more money, which also has jobs associated to that expenditure. I think I could spend that money better than the federal government. And so
that's pretty
and
easy to do.
Yeah, I don't think that's a crazy outlandish statement either. No offense to the systems which constitute our government, but
I'll offend them. Fucking serious.
But there's always someone on the other side going like, "Oh, you guys haven't thought about this angle and this specific."
I can guarantee you, 90% of the people that have that opinion have been straight up employees their entire life.
Yeah. Again, I almost feel like the word entrepreneur is fun to use, right? And with the opportunities today,
it's very liberal these days. That word, it is.
Well, look. Let's just. I just feel like just pay remittance tax for like 2-3 years, and then come back at me about like even something like minimum wage. Just pay remittance tax for 2-3 years, and then what's your context? I'd be fascinated to know.
It's cool. Being an entrepreneur is the cool thing to do right now. Yeah. There's people like Tony Robbins, Gary Vee, Grant Cardone, all those guys who are all over, Facebook, Instagram, all that shit, and they make it seem like it's so cool to be an entrepreneur. And then, people go to a couple seminars and buy one real estate investment property and think they're goddamn entrepreneurs. Well, that's not how it works. Like, and then they think they could be hardcore, like I said, employee their entire life. They buy one investment property and then they're an entrepreneur and think they have all these opinions. But
you've got to earn your stripes. It's like jujitsu.
100%.
It's like jujitsu because I've been obsessed about this over the last 2 weeks.
I'm amazed your ankles have been holding up as well as they have.
Hey, my ankles are better than ever. I'm just saying.
Excellent.
So you should ask the guy I just armbarred there recently how my ankles feel. So anyway, I feel like in jujitsu, there's people with their white belts that have no stripes that are calling themselves black belts. That's the comparison to entrepreneurs. They haven't spent the time and really put in the results. Potential's great, but at the end of the day, I just want accomplishments and I want to get shit done. And there's a lot of people that haven't done that yet. And I'll never forget this. There was this young kid on Instagram that tried to sell me a $10,000 revenue course, like do 10,000 in 30 days on Instagram. And that's cool. And by the way, that's a fit for some people, right? But I'm thinking like, man, the guy didn't even know who I was. He never even got to know me. There was really no, it wasn't good on he just went right to the pitch and I was kind of disappointed there. But, at the end of the day, like $10,000, man, that's not even going to pay the credit card bills.
No.
You know what I mean? Yeah. We'd be screwed if we just did 10. Oh my God. Do you want to sell your house? Because we just lost everything. Like 10,000 is just not going to do it. So, at the end of the day, I think people need to put in the work. The kid was like 18 and he was trying to sell a course on how to be a successful entrepreneur. I just think you have to earn your stripes.
I agree. But you know what? In 10 years, that kid's probably going to be
pretty good.
Shaker, but
he's probably
right now,
there's two sides to it.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. I mean, at least he's out doing stuff.
Yeah, that's the thing. Yeah. And then even the 40-year-old's like, ooh, this 18-year-old made 10 grand off Instagram. How do I do that?
Yeah.
I just feel like there's a lot of, again, the jiu-jitsu comparable. I feel like there's a lot of white belts trying to instruct their own. They're trying to be an instructor and own their own jiu-jitsu business when really, like, man, you just got to roll a little bit more, young buck. You know what I mean? You got to pay some dues yet. So, Anyway. Yeah.
Well, we've been yapping for like 30 minutes.
What is it? Is it already 3 minutes?
29.
Okay. Well, how about this? How about we close this one? Because I feel like we're on a roll and we have, like, I could have another drink or something and we can do a second episode. You want to do that?
I could probably do that.
Okay. So anyway, let's end on a good note. If you want to see the second episode, we'll keep going. We'll do like 30 minutes.
That's plenty. Yeah, most people won't even make it to 30. So
they're already thinking we're fucking crazy.
Congratulations, because I bet you hardly anybody will. But good for you if you do.
Okay.